Thank you all for joining us on a breezy, chilly day. This is Creative Mornings, Virginia Beach, and your local team here, co-founders, Robert Pyvash with Brand Fuel, Tessa Duquette here at the garage, lovely space, thank you for hosting us, and I'm Kate Pittman of the Vibe Creative District. We are so happy that you all joined us this morning to get some energy and to connect with someone who has, I think, a really compelling story. So we're going to introduce Erika in just a second. I want to run through a couple slides though. So real quick, Creative Mornings, the arrow over, okay. This month's theme is pain. Every month there's a global theme and we all assign speakers to that theme. Bring a friend. Thank you all for coming, but come back next time and bring a friend or a spouse or a loved one with you. 236 chapters and cities all across the globe at 69 countries, 27,000 attendees every month. There are so many resources online, so I know several people here have said that they watched Creative Mornings during COVID or have been investigating it recently. There are so many resources and brilliant speakers from all over the world, so I encourage you to go online and look at that. Go ahead. Field trips, there's even more fun to find, so follow them on social media. You can kind of learn from guest speakers all over the world. Okay. And then the manifesto. So we didn't do this last time, thought it was very important to bring it up. We're going to read through the Creative Mornings manifesto. You can join me if you like. Everyone is creative. A creative life requires bravery and action, honesty and hard work. We are here to support you, celebrate you, and encourage you to make the things you love. We believe in the power of community. Let's say that again. We believe in the power of community. We believe in giving a damn. We believe in face-to-face connections and learning from others and hugs and high fives. I think I got 4 hugs this morning. I read recently you need 4 hugs a day to be a whole person. Okay. We bring together people who are driven by passion and purpose, confident that they will inspire one another and inspire change in neighborhoods and cities around the world. Everyone is welcome. Thank you for being here. Okay, without further ado, it has been my pleasure to work with Erika Hitchcock for a couple years now on numerous projects around the Vibe, but I knew her even way back when, in my former days at Virginia Boca, and always knew her as a really compelling art educator. But in learning her story in recent years, it is something that has had an impact on me, and I'm so happy for her to share it with you all. This is a moment of bravery and a moment of honesty and really bearing it all. So I hope you'll give Erika a really warm welcome and your support.
So before I begin my story, I have to say that none of this could have happened without the loving support of my mother, daughter, and close friends, but especially my husband, who has been patient and kind. I wouldn't be in this place mentally or creatively without him. I've had a very strong team right alongside me, supporting me and encouraging me, and for that, I'm extremely grateful. When Kate asked me if I would be speaker for Creative Mornings for December, she gently explained the theme for the month and why she thought it would be a good fit. What she didn't realize was how timely her call request was. December is supposed to be a time of joy and celebration, gratitude, and the sharing of love, but for many, December could be a very difficult time. And for me, since December of 2018, I share in that struggle. You see, one of the greatest loves of my life, my younger brother Paul, was found dead on Christmas night. He died alone, they approximated 6 days earlier. I am thankful for Kate's invitation to talk this morning. I am not an open book, and I find it difficult to talk about myself, especially in an open setting. But I know my story of pain through tragic loss is shared by many. So my hopes are that through sharing my story, my brother Paul's story, I can help someone else going through the devastation of a tragic loss, especially during this time of celebration. So pain, we all feel it, experience it, and have it burden us throughout our lives. There's no escaping it. It's part of living, it's part of loving. But I do feel, although we all experience pain, some of us experience that life-altering pain, that literally shifts your mindset and perspective forever. The pain that is experienced from a loss that is untimely, tragic, and profound. That is the pain that brings me here today and caused a major shift in my life. So ironically, pain brought me to a beautiful space, and it's because of who I lost and his beauty. I don't want all our time today to focus on the pain. I want our time to focus on creativity brought about by healing, and how my loss has turned into an extension of love, through art making. So my brother Paul is the youngest of my 4 siblings. He was the only boy with 3 sisters who absolutely adored him. We always said Paul had 4 mothers, so his loss was one of a sibling and in some ways a child for me. Growing up was difficult in a dysfunctional family that was entrenched with parental alcoholism. And when Paul was born, I know one of his purposes on this earth was to bring love and happiness into our home. And that is exactly what he did for our family. He was my first true love. He taught me love, and as we grew up together, we were connected so strongly as soulmates. Cole was diagnosed with a severe mental illness after he finished college in his mid-20s. His diagnosis was a shock to us. Paul was such a well-rounded young man. He had his own landscaping business in high school. He was a state champion in wrestling, and he graduated from college in Colorado. We had never imagined a diagnosis like this, and we grieved for him for years. Like so many with mental illness, we had years of struggle with finding adequate care, the stigma surrounding his condition, and the overall darkness that comes with caring and coping with mental illness. But Paul was strong, and he eventually found a place of acceptance and compliance. He wanted so much to live a normal life. He moved back to Colorado, where he lived on his own, writing books, making music, and loving the beauty of the mountains. He lived there for years independently, but his condition started to worsen due to poor services and care, and in the fall of 2018, and ultimately in December, his illness took his life. He was found on Christmas night alone. The coroner estimated he had been dead for about 6 days. To this day, I can't understand why I didn't feel him leave this earth. The news of Paul's death and aftermath of having to go to Colorado to close out his life and bring his body home to rest was traumatizing. I look back now, and it's interesting how your body just goes into autopilot. I do not remember many details of that time. So having experienced this great loss, I was teaching at the time, and I had to go right back to work the next week. I had a lot of responsibilities with many teenagers who depended on me. On top of teaching at an IB school, we had field trips planned to go to New York, DC. We had community exhibitions and deadlines. There was so much going on. And again, I went into autopilot to manage. Within 3 weeks of losing Paul, I also lost my beloved little pet dog, Rocky, who, if you all, any pet owners in here, you know how traumatic that can be as well. So it was just, combined with Paul's loss, was just so difficult. But I got through the school year. I found a way to meet my obligations and provide for my students, and it was summer. I was able to have time to slow down and grieve. We had planned a trip with friends to France and Portugal in August, and while I was still in a very raw place, it was a chance to leave and hopefully find some peace in travel, which is something I love to do. But fate had other plans. It was a summer where the temperatures reached 110 in Paris, and I did not pay attention to drinking water. On the way home from Portugal, in the airport right after customs, I passed out due to dehydration, but I didn't just fall down. My body kept moving, and I slammed into and collided with a glass wall with a metal ledge, and spent the next 36 hours in a Portuguese hospital, which were some of the scariest hours of my life. This accident left me weak, mentally and physically. With much healing to do, I was not able to return to teaching. My mother stayed with us during this time, and knowing how depleted I was, she pushed me to find something I loved to do, and I knew it was working with clay. She bought me a slab roller, which is a piece of equipment for hand building with clay. She knew I needed an outlet to cope with the loss and pain of the year. This is when I started making dresses in clay. Years before, while teaching, I had made a few dresses in clay. They weren't very good, but I was really still connected to that idea. The creative process of sculpting allowed me to focus on something other than the pain I was feeling. It started as an escape, as a way to cope, and slowly evolved to a place of healing. I spent my days in my home studio with my hands in clay and my mind in a creative, restful zone. As I sculpted each gown, my husband would say, "You can sell these." And at that point, I did not agree. I thought they were pretty bad. But around the 100th gown, I started to believe it. Which brings me to the birth of stoneware ceramics. What started as a beautiful way to disconnect from pain became a place to heal and cope. And now it's turned into a beautiful business where I have the ability to create works of art that symbolize love stories with the great promise of never being alone. So that's all I'm going to read from. I had to kind of read from that because I wanted to make sure I got the story correct. It's a little bit emotional. But here we are. It brings me to stoneware ceramics, which was kind of born from this place of trauma. So it started out stoneware, W-E-A-R, as a pun on stoneware clay. But it really started with, it's 3 generations of women. So my mother, who's here today, she does those beautiful garment bags which cover the sculptures when they're finished. They're made from satin and velvet. And my daughter, who's an extraordinary artist in her own right, she designed my website and she taught me how to do all the marketing on social media, and she's still kind of my go-to when I need help with any type of marketing or social media things. What's so beautiful about this? I absolutely love sculpting. I love having my hands in dirt all day. We used to go out and play in the rain and make mud pies, and I used to ask my students all the time when they didn't like having their hands dirty. I'm like, "Didn't you make mud pies in the mud?" And they'd look at me like I was crazy. But I always liked having my hands in clay. I'm a big gardener, so it's just what it is. But what I didn't foresee, I love the sculpting part, but I did not ever think about all the love stories that would come my way. And that is what has been so beautiful, because I spend my days doing what I love creating, but I'm doing it for love. It's like these stories come to me and they're so beautiful. This one was a mother who, she designed and made her daughter's wedding gown for her. She had bought this lace in Paris years before, and it just came to fruition that was the perfect lace for this gown. So she commissioned me to make the piece. She actually got the piece a year after the wedding, but her daughter and her got dressed back up, went and hired a photographer just to pose with the gown. That's how much it meant to them. So just beautiful. This was a gift from another mom to her daughter on her wedding day. Just something so special. That wedding gown holds so much. I think a lot of people dream of what they're going to wear on their wedding day, but it encompasses so much more. It's a symbol of hope and love and family and all the things that happened, all those wonderful emotions that happened that day, all encompassed in this beautiful sculpture. And then these love stories. This was a C-note in Mexico that I got to do a commission for. They were married by a shaman in Mexico. Just absolutely beautiful, stunning images. And just people across the country that have commissioned me to create these special pieces. And it's not just weddings. So this is Linda. I consider her my fairy godmother. She just kind of came across me on Instagram. She introduced me to David Totera. How random is that? But she had this gown that her mom wore at her wedding. She then wore it at her daughter's wedding, and it was sitting in a closet. It meant so much to her, and she wanted it just small. She wanted the right size to fit on her shelf in the background. But she was so in love with it when she received it, she pulled the gown back out of the closet, still fit her, posed for it, did a little video for me. She was just thrilled with it. And of course I had to get the purse in there, which was made with hundreds and hundreds of little beads for her. And this was another beautiful story. So this is Greta, and she spent 25 years service for the Marine Band. She, was so proud of her service, as she should be. And she wanted this piece as a memorial to remember her time. This was tricky because this was so exact. A lot of the times with the gown, I could take a little artistic, levity with what I want to do, but with this, it had to be exact down to the buttons and the braiding and the medals. But she absolutely adored it. She brought it to her ceremony and had it standing with her when she accepted her award. So how do I do this? I spent a lot of time in the studio. I really start from a block of clay. It's funny, a friend of mine thought I sat on the wheel like in Ghost. I'm like, no. That's not how you do it. Here's the slab roller that my mom bought me. You just basically take a piece of clay, roll it out flat, prep it, and then clay is wet. It's not going to stand up on its own, so you need some sort of an armature. And for most of them, I work with a PVC pipe and I just do the additive process and start to add clay to get the form. I work from photos, so you can see I have a photo of the bride, and I worked to achieve their body form also in the sculpture. So I really stare at the photo of the bride for, 35 hours or 6 to 8 weeks. I feel very close and connected with them. They don't know that, but I do. And just really to achieve every detail. It is a stonework clay, so it is fired twice. So I do, I keep in touch with them very closely and send them photographs along the way. This is after the first firing and low fire, and then I underglaze them and fire them again into stoneware. And then the fun part, really, well, it's all fun to me, but it's even more, every part's fun for me. But then I get to any type of detail, so rhinestones, beading, sequenced. I bring it into my finishing studio, it's finishing time, and I start adding them one by one to get the replica. Buttons, anything. My husband was so kind to buy me one of those magnifying glasses because he's like, how are you seeing this? I pride my lace wall. It's growing in my studio. I collect lace, so I go up to New York to the garment district a couple times a year. They have lace from all around the world, and I just see what I can, and I just my lace wall has grown to encompass the whole side of my studio. Every piece is different. A lot of times what I'm doing is I'm cutting apart lace and putting it back together to try to replicate what I'm seeing. This piece right here was actually the lace from the gown. Now it's not to scale, but I thought it was how special is that lace is actually used on her replica as well. So sometimes I get lucky and that happens. Again, here's just an image as far as trying to get the sculpture in the form of the bride. That's where it starts. And then, this is that greenware stage, and then finishing, this has hundreds and hundreds of pearls that accented the lace. And then when they get them, it's just so amazing. So, Kate, one more slide. I looked, when I was trying to put this together, there's so much joy in the pictures I work from when they're in their wedding gowns, which is just how wonderful to stare at that all day. And then the gown's produced and it's sent to them, and then they send me a picture of them with the gown, and I see the same joy in their face again, when they're holding their piece, because it means so much to them. So it's just so special. Part of my business I've dedicated to, when you go through something so tragic, I think it enhances your empathy to people who go through things. So I have a stronger than stone portion of my business where these stories just kind of come to me. I don't look for them, but it's about, it's for women that have gone through something and stood strong, and I donate a sculpture to them. So this is Miss Tucker. She was on social media. I don't know if you saw her. It just the story came my way, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to make her gown. But an African-American woman in the South, she got married and she was never allowed to go into a boutique to try on a dress. And then in her 90s, her nieces took her to try on her first wedding gown. It made social media. It was so beautiful. But I reached out to her nieces, and I said, I have to make this for your grandmother. And I did, and I sent it to her, and we FaceTimed. I wanted so badly to go out and meet her. She was so sweet, but it was during COVID. So we FaceTimed. She was so happy to open this gown and see it and have it. So it was just beautiful. So if you look on my website, there's about probably 7 women now, and the stories are very inspiring. And then we come to Nami and Kay. And Kay and I go back years. In fact, Kira. They go back to Kira, one of my original students at Green Run Collegiate, surprised me this morning. We did a unit of study with Mocha and Nami, and my beautiful students made these cloaks, and it started our relationship, and it was about mental illness. Kay and I have stayed in touch, and we revisited with Kate and with Vibe and the Seeds of Hope project that we did a couple years ago, where it was a community mural. It's located at a couple, what do you call it? What's that area called?
Mediterranean.
The Mediterranean Parklet. Probably over 200 people were involved in this, and it's a mural. For me, it was personal about Paul, but it's based on a quote that I found after losing him. I was walking through Seashore State Park, and I came across a quote, and this was the basis of this. But we were able to get everyone together. It was made of hundreds of flowers. Tyler Jesse's a local artist who cut them out of woods from templates. And then we had students come in and teachers, and they painted them. And they were all brought together under this quote, "If I had a flower for every time I thought of you, I would walk through my garden forever." And they all came together with a flower garden. And my mother has been, over the years, taking care of this beautiful flower garden. In fact, she was there the other night, at night, decorating it for, in the dark, decorating it for Christmas. I don't know why she was out in the dark. It's absolutely, it's beautiful. And then we had, again, over 200 people, Seasons for Nonviolence Collective, a citizen group. They came in, they painted rocks, Virginia Beach technical school students made benches, so it was a beautiful collaboration. And then we recently got together again. We decided to make the flowers kind of a theme. And we got together with Seth and Kate to do part of the mural festival for You're Not Alone. And of course that speaks volumes to me and to, I'm sure, many, many people, with the hopes that that message reaches people that need it. So love is the answer, that video you saw in the beginning. If I can think my brother, or know my brother's looking down, I can't think of a better way he could have orchestrated my life without him than to be surrounded by love, with the promise that, receiving this promise that you will not be alone through these wedding sculptures. So that's my story.
Erika, can you touch on why that art making process was so important to you when you were working through your grief? Was it meditation? Was it just distraction?
How many artists are in here? So there's something about art making that it's a total disconnect. So you have to disconnect from your emotions and really focus on what you're doing. And I think at the time when it was just being connected to my mind and it was just so painful. So having that time to just disappear and connect and focus on something I totally enjoyed doing, tactfully, and it was a saving grace for me. I don't know what I would have done without it. I don't know. That was, for me, that's what I turned to, and it's something healthy to turn to. Unfortunately, sometimes people don't have that outlet.
Question.
Sorry. Erika, of all the things that you could have started sculpting, you chose wedding dresses and that sort of thing. How did you get to that place?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I think about that a lot. The dress has always been a theme. I was never I didn't consider myself an artist because teaching took up my time. Here I can tell you the great things that we did together. That was 24/7 for me. Planning, writing, developing units of study for the students, traveling with them, and getting them involved with artists. So I never really considered myself an artist. My creativity went into planning for them. But I did when I did make something, there was a dress involved, and I think I always thought it represented my family, my sisters. When I was teaching a ceramics class in Northern Virginia, I worked with an amazing ceramic artist who taught me more about the medium. And I started to make dresses there. Some of them were wedding dresses, they were just tacky dresses, they were so bad. So bad. But anyway, I loved them. But then I kind of moved back here, went back into teaching, left that. I don't know what made me go back into dresses and then turn to wedding dresses. But now I'm looking at it, I really think wedding dresses are beautiful. The women are beautiful in them. It's the happiest day of their lives. And I really think it's because it's this promise of never being alone, and it just encompasses everything. It's a dress, but it just encompasses so much more. So, I don't know if I answered your question.
Could you elaborate a little more on the actual process of having a dress made? Especially talking about a wedding. So is it before the wedding, after the wedding? I'm just curious.
So it depends. Instagram's been wonderful for me because it's connected me with people around the world. Basically, what people do is if they want one commission, they reach out to me. I work from photographs. I've done wedding gown commissions for mothers of the bride, for husbands as gifts for the actual bride. Sometimes they're before, and the bride wants it at the wedding. Sometimes they're gifts after, or their anniversary gifts. It just really depends. There's no real one set way. But once they send me photographs, And then it's 6 to 8 weeks, 30 plus hours that I spend on the gowns. So it's time consuming. So if it's for a wedding, it has to be definitely planned before.
So prior to your loss, did you, because your dress is very detailed, so are you saying that you had this tragic and then you learned to do this, or you was doing some form of art and before?
I dabbled, I'll say it was a dabbling. The dresses I did before, there were only maybe 4 really, and they were just clay and with glaze on. They were not anything what I'm doing now. Again, I think this is my brother working through me. He's a very creative person too. Sometimes I wake up and I'm like, do I still have the gift of making them? Because it just came about. And there's that book with 10,000 hours. If you guys read that, where you can master something. If you do, I really think the more you do something, you just start to get better and better at it. It's just the way it is. I'm very busy now. I'm booked through May, but there was a time when I was just in between commissions. I had time, so I'd find another gown that maybe I could experiment with to do learn a different technique. So I was just constantly making.
Have you made your own wedding dress?
Oh. So my gift, mother. So I didn't have the beautiful elaborate dress.
Missing Erika.
Sorry.
Mom bashing time, no.
I'm sorry, Erika, but you'll have to put it on Instagram.
So my husband and I have been married 32 years. My daughter's 32, so do the math. My daughter was at our wedding. Our family was shocked. We hadn't finished college yet. But I basically went to Macy's and found a white dress and took it off the rack. So I didn't have that experience, and that might be some of my attraction to it. I just didn't get that.
Renew your vow. And then create the sculpture. Tell them that your wedding picture looked like you and Bill were playing house.
We were young. I was 22. Bill wasn't even 20 yet, so he couldn't drink. He had our baby. Amanda was at our wedding, but he couldn't have any drinks because he wasn't 21.
As an educator, I'm an educator also, and when I got sick, I left the field of education, but then want to go back into bringing what I've learned through my healing. Are you thinking possibly of maybe even maybe not full-time, but doing something back into the education field? No?
No, I taught for 18 years. I was pretty burned out by the time the accident happened. In fact, it probably was time for me to retire and find something new, but I wasn't. Once you get in that, it's hard to break out of it. I think the accident caused me time to just take a step back and say, okay, it's time. It was at a time where I wasn't healthy within myself because it was time for me to retire. I absolutely loved it when I was doing it, and I love my students. They know that, but it was time.
Can I say something though? What she has done is take her teaching to NAMI and mental health, and she's teaching students that way with Season for Nonviolence.
That's what I was thinking too, because I work now in NAMI also. I work in mental health with teachers and students, same thing. I didn't want to go back in the classroom full time, but you are involved.
Yeah, and I will always, our paths crossed years ago when Paul was, in the trenches of being sick, and that's why I was so connected to Kate and the units that we were teaching then. I'll always stay connected. It's a resource, and it's a resource I wish my brother had. He didn't have that. And it's so needed because the illness itself is so isolating, and when there's nothing it's overwhelming.
Can you tell us a little more about NAMI? I don't think everybody knows what NAMI is.
Okay, do you want to talk? Why don't you talk?
So first of all, some of you may have been in the MoCA in 2017, and there was an exhibit on mental health. We were one of the 4 places that had it. And in the process of that, Erika's students designed these cloaks, and each cloak stood for mental health. And that's where we began our connection. A year later then, her brother died, and we reconnected through Season for Nonviolence, which is the event from the 30th of January to 4th of April, Gandhi's assassination and Martin Luther King's, I called Erika, I need some help, can you help with a mural? It went on from there and then we've reconnected. But NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. We are NAMI Coastal Virginia, so we represent all of our cities here in the area as well as the Eastern Shore. We provide free education, support, and advocacy for individuals living with mental health issues and, in a very broad sense, family members. We love participation in volunteers. We are basically a volunteer-based organization. I know for my husband and I, it was the best thing that happened to us. We took a family education class that educated us about mental illness. Our daughter lives with bipolar disorder, and she lives successfully with it, as many people do. Unfortunately, in the news you hear the worst side of it, but generally people who can get help and get family support can move forward. And I'd be glad to talk more about it, but our website is NAMI Coastal Virginia. We do a lot of creative things. Right now we're creating a video about NAMI to help us market better, because as we expand we need more volunteers, more money. And Erika is part of that video.
Erika, who's your most VIP client? What was your most exciting dress in terms of, attention and?
So it's been since 3 years, and it's been the relationships and kind of the pathways have been very interesting. So David Tatera, got to go out and meet him at his home, and his husband and Linda orchestrated this surprise because he had some gowns that he had designed, so we surprised him with the gowns, so that was interesting.
And he's from?
It's
Say Yes to the Test? No, which one?
No, David Tatera, he's back. I think he's back in like 90s. He used to have his own show. Do you all remember him?
My Fair Wedding.
My Fair Wedding. He's a kind of a luxury wedding planner. Does amazing work. Recently, I had an opportunity to do a gown for kind of an influencer. That's been interesting too, learning about influencers. I don't understand it, but just don't understand. I did her gown, and she was getting married in North Carolina, and Selena Gomez was supposed to be in her wedding, so it was a possibility that my gown was going to get into Vogue. Very big possibility. Turned out Selena hurt her foot or something the night before, didn't make it, so the whole thing went. But it's been, again, I've met a lot of really interesting people, and just Project One Way. Oh, Project One Way, yes, Aaron Michaels. I designed his gown last year. He was launching his bridal collection, so I got to present him with one of his gowns at a show. So yeah, it's been fun. I like the everyday stories. I'm not very starstruck. I've had a lot of I'm working on a gown now that is from Canada. The mother's doing it for her daughter. The daughter had a brain tumor, and she wasn't sure she was going to be able to make the wedding date. And she did. She healed and made it, and her mom wants this gown for her. So those type of stories really sit with me better.
We have one final question.
It's more of a comment than a question. I'm trying not to cry. But when you mentioned December was hard, last December was the first without my dad, and I really related to that. A couple months later, I started working in creative marketing, and I just feel like this being my first Creative Mornings is just a sign that I'm at the right place at the right time. And I want to thank you